What would it be like to be so self-conscious of your scars that you walked around with a blanket in order to try to hide your face? There's dog fur all over this thing. Let's set the scene. It's the mid-1600s, northwest of what today is known as Albany, New York. The French and the indigenous tribes keep working at trade agreements, but they fall apart easily, and both sides tend to deal with these problems using violence because that always works out great. The French are sending in missionaries to help and to convert, but one tribe in particular is not having it. Just a few years ago, in fact, the Mohawk tribe showed their appreciation to the Jesuits by martyring 3 of their missionaries. I won't go into the details of that particular moment. Anyway, this is the world into which a girl who would later be known as Kateri was born into. I would tell you what her original name was, but my research came up with several different names, so it's still unclear to me. At 4 years old, Kateri and her family contracted smallpox. This left her entire family, her father, also chief of the tribe, her mother, and her brother, dead. Kateri survived, but she was left horribly scarred. She felt humiliated by how her face looked and often tried to hide it, hence the blanket. Later in her life, she became very impressed with the black robes. These were Jesuit priests who came into her village and helped the sick and the poor, despite the clear tensions between their people and hers. The more she learned about Christianity from these black robes, the more she fell in love with Jesus. She vowed to never be married, declaring she was married to Christ. When she was 19, she became baptized. This is where she took the name Kateri. It's the Mohawk version of Catherine after St. Catherine of Siena, which, oh wow, look at that. We recently did a video on that saint. You should watch that. After you finish this video, of course, I'll link to it at the end. But, by subscribing and clicking that notification bell, YouTube will let you know when I post videos of other saints in the future. All right, back to our story. Adopted by her father's brother, who became chief after her father died, Kateri's family was not happy about her conversion at all. They punished her by giving her more work, but Kateri remained faithful. She respected the commandment to rest on the Lord's day. She also respected the Mohawk tradition that said, if you don't work, you don't eat. Therefore, she didn't work and she didn't eat on Sundays. She's putting us modern day resters to shame. She prayed diligently for her tribe to convert. She followed the black robes' example and helped those who were ill. She fasted and practiced self-mortification. It's a practice that was well known and accepted by her, as it was also done by her Mohawk tribe. But her family and neighbors looked down on her. They started spreading rumors that she was involved in sorcery, and she eventually had to flee to a community in Canada, specifically for Indigenous converts. Just 5 years after her baptism, at the age of 24, Kateri became ill and died. It was reported that just minutes after she breathed her last, that her scars disappeared and her face became radiant and beautiful. Kateri had her own insecurities, and she was clearly not popular among her people. But in the long run, all that mattered was her love of Christ. We should follow her example by shirking off what is deemed popular by our culture and focusing on what is truly important, Christ's love for us, and do everything in our subpar human power to love him back in return. So here's that link I promised you. Only click on it if you would like to hear about someone who was probably the most powerful woman in all of Europe at her time. Maybe all the world. I don't know. And Saint Kateri, pray for us.